It's the end of the year, predictions are out. We're going to look at today what everyone is saying about the 2024 housing market. We're going to see what Redfin says, what Realtor.com says, and Zillow, and I'm going to give you my opinion as well. I want you to drop yours in the comments, so let's get into it. All right, starting with Realtor.com. They have a pretty detailed prediction here. I'm going to take you through a few different things. So first, inventory. They are saying that inventory is going to decrease by 14%. I will say all of this is on a national scale, of course, not specific to Phoenix, but we'll talk a little bit about Phoenix as well. They have a couple points in here. Mortgage rates, 6.8%. So they're saying that rates are going to come down slightly, but still remain high. Next year, home prices will go down by 1.7% and rental rates will go down by 0.2%. So just a slight change in prices, slight change in rates, but we're going to see a pretty big change in the amount of inventory out there. When I first read this, I thought, well, how are we going to get low inventory but not see a lot of change in pricing one way or the other? But they talk a little bit more about what they expect with inventory. First, here's what they're saying about prices: 1.7% dip in 2024 as maxed out buyers lose their sense of urgency. Basically saying that buyer demand is not really recovering too much next year. Home sales are barely budging above 2023's likely record low. So we're still going to see a pretty slow year in terms of home sales, according to Realtor.com. Home sales expected to remain steady, 0.1% growing as mortgage rates ease. So they're basing this on the fact that rates will probably come down a little bit, as they said in the beginning there. And with that, we'll start to see sales coming a little bit more alive, but they don't have very high hopes on that happening. Sustained improvement in inflation expected to bring mortgage rates down to 6.5% by the end of 2024. I spoke about this on my recent video. We have seen the predictions for next year for the Fed cutting rates. They just came out and said they will be cutting rates. And so that will affect mortgage rates. So likely we are going to see a shift in mortgage rates next year. The big question is how much, and how much will that actually affect the real estate market? So as far as inventory, they're saying that we are going to see this decrease in existing homes for sale, but new construction and rentals are the relief valve. So basically, we're going to start to see more new construction options, and people are going to be more inclined to use rental options versus that resale home. So for sale inventory forecasted to fall 14.7%. I think that's an interesting prediction. And when we look at the other forecasts from Redfin and Zillow, you'll see that they are saying a few different things as far as inventory goes. They also note that mortgage rates at 6.5% are higher than existing rates on 85% of mortgages. So at the end of 2024, even if we get down to 6%-ish, we're still going to have a situation where most people have a lower rate than what is out there if you're going to buy right now. And for that reason, they're saying that the lock-in effect still exists. And that's essentially what the lock-in effect is. So many people have low rates, they have no incentive to sell because the alternative is going to be more expensive for them. Now, they note in here as well that rental supply will outpace demand and it will drive mild further decline in rents. So starting to see some rental rates come down. And they also talk about the demand in rentals as well, that we'll start to see more of a surge in rental demand. They also give a few local market predictions. So looking down here at Phoenix, they're saying that the sales growth is going to be 4.4% and price growth actually going to go down, negative 4.3%. So that is what Realtor.com is forecasting. Let's look at what Redfin is saying because it's a little bit different. Redfin is saying that home prices are going to go down just slightly, about 1%. And so not a huge change. Realtor.com didn't see a huge change in home prices either. So that is a consistent theme there. They're also talking about the fact that new listings will go up, and that is what will essentially bring down prices. They're saying actually that the lock-in effect is going to ease. So I thought that was interesting how Realtor.com is saying that that is still going to be an issue next year. And Redfin is actually predicting that this lock-in effect is going to ease. Why? Because they're saying that people are just going to come to terms with the fact that the rates are the rates. They're not going to go back down anywhere near where they've been below 5 and 4%. So people will just kind of decide to transact in the market if they need to. They also say that home sales are going to increase and end the year up 5%. So that's a pretty big difference compared to Realtor.com saying that sales are just going to kind of stay stagnant. As far as rates are concerned, they're saying that rates will steadily decline but remain above 6%. That's pretty consistent. So rentals will be a popular option, and that will actually increase some rental rates. They expect prices of large rental units to climb next year as supply falls to meet demand. And downward pressure will be on prices for smaller rentals because there's more of them and a backlog waiting to hit the market. So it'll be an interesting landscape as far as rentals go. They also talk about not only will rentals be popular, but we're going to start to see a little bit of a migration shift, basically a reversal of what we saw during the pandemic. Specifically in coastal cities like Florida, they're calling it boomerang migration. So people are going back to where they came from, and people are also going to start looking in the downtown areas again because they have to get back into offices. So for that, we may see a rental demand increase because folks have to get back towards downtown. It might be unaffordable for them. Therefore, they're forced to rent and kind of coming back to where they came from. So that's a really interesting insight, and we'll see if that it plays out. It's crazy to think we're about 4 years out of the pandemic now, and we're starting to see things kind of go back to normal and reset. Now, jumping over to Zillow, what they're saying is pretty similar to Redfin in a lot of ways. They're saying we're going to see more homes hit the market as homeowners accept the fact that mortgage rates aren't falling anytime soon. So they agree that lock-in effect is not really happening anymore. Everyone's kind of coming to terms with what's actually happening with rates. They're saying home buying costs will level off and give hopeful buyers a chance to catch up. So we're going to see prices come down a little bit. They call for values to hold steady in 2024, falling 0.2%. Predicting how mortgage rates will move is nearly an impossible task, but recent inflation news gives the impression that rates are likely to hold fairly steady as well in the coming months. They say that new starter home will be a single family rental. So similar to what Redfin was saying, there's going to be more surge in demand for rentals because that's the most affordable option. So rather than going out to find your starter home to buy, you're just going to find a rental. More markets will follow New York City's lead with rental demand surging towards the downtowns. That's something I already touched on, so we may see more of that. The traditional home buyer will compete with home flippers for homes that need a little TLC. I think that's interesting as well. Basically, people will just start to be a little bit more flexible with what they're buying and be more open to doing some work on a home rather than finding something turnkey. And artificial intelligence will enhance the home search experience. That'll be something to watch out for. They talk about how AI is already assisting with realtors writing listing descriptions and creating 3D content for their listing, but it might advance more to have an emphasis on visual and multimodal capabilities, including more rich media content. And I definitely think AI is here to stay, so that's not a surprising prediction. So what are the common threads here? Well, Zillow and Redfin think that inventory is going to increase and prices will come down. Realtor.com is saying inventory will actually decrease, but still see a shift in affordability because of the new construction aspect. All of them seem to think that there's going to be a slight improvement in prices and affordability, but nothing drastic. So if you followed along with all of that, all of their predictions with pricing and home values is a very minimal shift. None of them are really expecting any sort of crash or even a major correction next year. All of them believe that rates will come down, and they all touched on the demand for rentals, but also said that rental rates will soften. So it's going to be interesting to watch. They all have a little bit of a difference in opinion, and I think the biggest difference is their predictions on inventory and the lock-in effect. So here's what I'm thinking. First, if this is valuable to you, make sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing. I'd love for you to be here with me every week. I think our inventory is going to remain low. We had an inventory issue before the pandemic, and I don't think that that's been resolved. So for that reason, I think inventory will remain low and the lock-in effect does exist here. I say that because I'm one of those people that doesn't want to sell because I have a low rate, and I talk to so many people all the time that really don't want to get over that hurdle because they just don't have a motivation to do so. So with the lock-in effect and having low inventory, I think that's going to keep our prices pretty stable and honestly might push them up a little bit next year. I think our demand is going to go up a bit as rates come down. I see rates hanging out in the low 6% range. I think we have a little bit of pent-up buyer demand here that is going to come out as soon as we start to see some movement in rates and as we start to see a busier spring season. As for sales rates, I think those will stay low compared to the previous years, but it'll be higher than it was in 2023. We're going to be a little bit busier on the transaction side next year. New construction prices, I think, will come down a little bit because we'll get a little bit more new construction inventory. And I can definitely see rental rates going up slightly because of a higher demand with rentals. So as I say, a prediction is only a prediction. It is so hard to guess what will happen next year, but based on what we know today, that's where I think we'll be in 2024. Now, there is a benefit to buying now. As I said, I think there's some pent-up demand. I think as rates go down, we're going to see a lot more buyers coming out there, and I don't think our inventory problem is solved. So if you're in a place where you're considering buying, you may want to consider getting into the mix sooner than later. Check our description below. We have a link for a first-time home buyer guide, and you can search our MLS for homes for sale. If you want to know a little bit more on what's going on in the Phoenix market right now and why Dave Ramsey says now is a good time to buy, make sure you check out this video right here.